On today's episode of Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, Frank de Boer is unemployed, the round of 16 is here, and Dave Sarakan to Atlanta United? I'm Steven Jodderin, and this is Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast. Now, listeners, if you haven't done so, hit the subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review, and follow us at Uncle Sam's Soccer Pod. Now, let's get to today's episode.
Thanks for listening to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, keeping you up to date with the latest in American soccer. And don't forget to subscribe.
Alrighty, listeners, we are back here with a weekend edition of Uncle Sam's Soccer Pod. And who would have thought we'd be having so much soccer breaking news on a Friday night? But Jake, I can see you in my monitor. You're staying over at your TV. You got baseball playing. You're a pretty happy man. But let me ask you, without fans, is it strange watching baseball, especially after watching soccer without fans in stadiums?
No, because the baseball crowd noise they pipe in is like that dull. Just like when you listen to a baseball game, it's kind of like that dull roar where it's just people in the stands having conversations
right on their
each other.
phones and not paying attention, and then the ball comes and splats them right in the head.
Right. Well, the thing with fake soccer noise is it's I don't even know how to describe it. It just seems like when someone scored a goal during one of those FS1 broadcasts, the cheers for when the goal happened seems so unsoccer-like, if you will. Like that's not the kind of crowd roar you hear, or the chants they tried to put in subtly underneath the game. Like that's not. I don't know. It just it didn't mesh well with MLS. I'll concede that. I still prefer the crowd noise, but it just didn't mesh well with MLS's back tournament.
Justin, I never got your opinion on this. How do you feel about the crowd noise fake pumped in for the TV broadcast on Fox Sports?
I'm okay with having like just a regular kind of crowd in the background, but I think Jake's right in terms of like when a goal is scored or when a foul is committed or something, the noise is like delayed by a second or two. So then it almost feels like everything kind of happened and then you hear people cheering or booing or whatever it may be. So, I mean, it's obviously not going to be perfect. It's going to have its awkward moments, but I'm relatively indifferent about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And listeners, on today's episode, we're recording this, as I mentioned, Friday night, July 24th. And boy, who would have thought we'd be having so much Major League Soccer news here on this Friday night? And listeners, plenty to get to. I want to begin with this.
I read something, some quote from the worst manager in the history of the Premier League, Frank de Boer. 7 matches, 7 defeats, 0 goals. Where he was saying that it's not good for Marcus Rashford to have a coach like me, because the most important thing for me is to win. If he was coached by Frank, he would learn how to lose, because he lost every game.
That is right. Frank de Boer is the subject of tonight's show. He's on his way out. He's unemployed. Jake, we just talked about this on the other episode on how hot his seat was, and boy, Atlanta pulled the plug during a pandemic.
Jose was right. He's always right. That's why he's one of the GOATs in my mind when it comes to managers in soccer. I don't think either of you agree with that. But he was right. Frank de Boer, I mean, look, we've said this before this podcast, before this season. Frank de Boer's not a great coach, not great for Atlanta United. All the fun and all the excitement that was with that club, their first 2 years under Tata, was sucked out from them when Frank de Boer arrived as manager. They weren't fun to watch. I mean, there was players butting heads with him and disagreements of style of play. And I mean, and you kind of saw that in the MLS's back tournament in Orlando, no goals scored, just boring to watch. And who would have thought before this tournament started, FC Cincinnati would have advanced and Atlanta United did not? Who saw that coming?
Justin, you mentioned on last episode that, and look, I think this was a fair assessment from you, so I'm not trying to call you out one way or the other, but it just seemed like, why would Atlanta get rid of their coach on a shortened season during a pandemic after 3 games?
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, I thought it made more sense to kind of wait out the regular season and just see what De Boer could do. Hopefully Joseph gets back from injury and they can try and figure something out. Maybe get a little bit more time to work with the players he brought in. But, looking at this, I'm not bothered by it in any way. I think it makes somewhat of a good move because Atlanta now have this kind of pause between the tournament and the regular season to scout out and see who's available, try and get them acclimated and give them this kind of weird regular season to get used to their squad and then see what they need going forward when they go into that January window and then when we go into the 2021 season.
Guys, let me read you this. This is from The Athletic. This is from Felipe Cardenas and Paul Tenorio. Inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium locker room last May, a few hours before their game against Toronto FC, Atlanta United players watched the second leg of their UEFA Champions League semi-final between Ajax and Tottenham Hotspur, when the Brazilian winger Lucas Moura's stoppage time winner trickled past Ajax goalkeeper Andre Oana, knocking out the Dutch on aggregate score. A large chunk of Atlanta's locker room erupted in cheers. Outside the room, within earshot of the celebration, sat the person from whom the cheers were targeted, Atlanta coach Frank de Boer, a former Ajax great. Yikes. Ouch. I mean, that locker room never liked Frank de Boer, despite the success that he had, winning 2 trophies.
How do we know that there's not just a bunch of Tottenham Hotspur fans in the Atlanta United locker room?
Jake, really? Come on. Come on.
I don't know. This sounds like maybe fake news. I don't know. Sounds like we're connecting dots. Look, you're probably right. They probably were cheering for Spurs because of the Frank de Boer link to Ajax, and that's definitely a new level of petty reach there by the Atlanta United locker room there, I must say.
But it just seemed like it just wasn't. It was never a good match, was it?
No, I don't think it ever was. I mean, all credit to De Boer. I mean, he brought an Open Cup to them last year. And, this new Campeones Cup, they won it. And I think for the most part, people were trying to give him the benefit of the doubt of trying to turn Atlanta into his own team, transform it from what Tata had into what Frank wanted. And you can see by some of the transfers. I mean, like LGP left. Marone was obviously sold to Newcastle. Villalba left. Gressel was traded. And he brought in players like Hinman, Brooks Lennon, Mesa, Rossetto, and even Pity Martinez. But you could argue none of those players have really hit the ground running or really done much to kind of prove why Frank brought them in to change the system in the first place. So then you start kind of questioning whether the manager kind of knows what he's doing in terms of the personnel and the style he wants. And then you look at players that were already there, like Barco. I mean, him and Pity were supposed to be those 2 creative midfielders that Joseph would feed off of. And while there were moments that it would happen and Joseph kind of did his thing in goal scoring, it never really seemed like the 3 of them or even the 2 of them between Barco and Pity Martinez were really ever clicking.
What I find really fascinating, guys, about the sacking of Frank de Boer at Atlanta United is these last 2 sentences of this Athletic piece. They write this, quote, "The one thing is certain, Atlanta United is in crisis mode. How the club manages will decide both the short and long-term future of the organization." In crisis mode? In crisis mode. Like, this is Atlanta United. In crisis mode. Is this an overstatement? It feels like an overstatement.
For a lot of clubs, it's probably an overstatement, but I think Arthur Blank demands he demands attractive football. I mean, let's face it, soccer in this country isn't the number one sport. Not every kid grows up and says, I want to play soccer in this country. It's usually they want to play in the NFL or the NBA. And you have to also look at it from the fact that they're in the South, so you're competing against college football in the NFL. So I think Arthur Blank sees the product on the field and go, this is boring. This is not exciting. So
it's a stylistic thing. They're in crisis mode because it's a stylistic thing.
That, and I think they
So if Frank de Boer went out there and played beautiful soccer and lost 5-4 every time, he'd still have his job?
No. No, he wouldn't have his job. I mean, look, they played beautiful football under Tata, and they won. They won all the time. You know,
so is it a winning thing or is it a stylistic thing?
This isn't an Arsenal thing with Arsene Wenger. You know what I mean? It is a stylistic thing. It's definitely a stylistic thing. And then when you're playing crappy football, it's not fun to watch. And then you're going out and losing now to the likes of FC Cincinnati. I mean, that's where
I don't know.
The rubber meets the road for Frank de Boer.
Right, but it goes back to what Justin said last episode, in which how is Atlanta United going to? Is this a justifiable sacking of a manager after a wacky beginning of a season in which we're in the midst of a pandemic and it's 3 group stage games? Yeah, they lost every single one.
Well, I mean, I think it comes from that anecdote that you read from the Athletic piece about the players kind of, cheering towards De Boer. It wasn't just that the product on the field wasn't good. It just seemed like, the locker room wasn't even behind him or really buying into his system. And in terms of it being like a stylistic thing or a winning thing, Tata found the balance between playing attractive soccer and winning. And I think if De Boer managed to implement his more reserved style of play and got the best out of Barco and Pitti and Joseph Martinez to play that, quote unquote, exciting soccer up front, while the rest of their team kind of did the defensive and little work, it would have been excused because they were winning and they had some type of excitement going on, even though they were playing more reserved. But none of that happened. They had a winning record. I mean, De Boer went 24-15. In all his league matches, and
he got to the conference finals last year.
Yeah,
in the playoffs.
He got them to the conference finals. But then I think once you saw that Martinez was taken out of the lineup, especially in this tournament, there was no backup or there was no replacement for him. There wasn't a Tito Villalba to fill in for him in that role, and I think that's also where De Boer fell short, is he wasn't finding players to kind of replace the ones that had left properly. And there weren't players who could fill in the stars that were still at their team.
Yeah.
And guys, one thing I will add too, just about this firing, this is something a big club does. This makes Atlanta feel like a big club, does it not?
Manchester United.
I'm not going to compare to Manchester United.
No, I will. I never finished this point on last episode, but look, you're right, Jake. This makes them feel like the biggest club. In fact, I think they're the biggest club in Major League Soccer. They have a true identity. It's clearly a message of the style of what they want to play. They're in Atlanta, a massive city in the United States. Not only that, they have a fan culture, and players kind of want to go to Atlanta. It worked. Whatever Atlanta did with their expansion franchise, it worked. Whatever magic, pixie dust, fairy tale, legacy name, whatever they did, it worked. And yeah, it does make them feel like a big club because they fired a guy after leading them to the conference finals, winning the U.S. Open Cup and the Champions Cup. Like, he put silverware in that club's history. On top of that, he has a winning record. And then, 5 games into the regular season, he's out the door? Yeah, Jake, you're right. Big club status from Atlanta United.
And I think you touched on something there, too, about, players wanting to come to Atlanta and play. I think a big part of that was their personnel there, like the Almirones, who opened the door for Paraguayans to kind of come to the MLS. But as, players kind of lose their shine, like Pitti and like Barco, and less attractive players from South America enter the team, other players, other younger players like another Almiron or like another Barco or Villalba are going to look at Atlanta and say, they're not as good as they used to be. Maybe I'll look at a different MLS team to come in. And I think that's also a worry that Atlanta and their owners are looking at too, because they can't afford to lose that South American market. That's essentially what put them on the pedestal that they're on, and they don't want to lose that foundation.
Well, look where a lot of those South American players are now going. I mean, you're starting to see a lot of young South American players heading for LAFC. I mean, with Cifuentes, Rossi, Rodriguez. I mean, there have been a number of signings that LAFC have made of young, exciting South American players recently. And I know, but I think what Justin's saying leads credence to, if a young South American player says, I want to go to MLS, but I got to play boring, crappy, not fun soccer with Frank de Boer, or I can go play with Bob Bradley and Carlos Vela, where do you want to play? Because they're both good teams, right? I mean, they're both through the upper echelon teams in the league. So I can go play expressive football with LAFC, or I can go and play pragmatic football with Atlanta United.
That's fair. All right, let's talk about the potential replacements. Let's speculate. Let's put our tinfoil hats here. And Justin, you assembled a very interesting list of potential candidates.
Yeah, I mean, this was largely just taking like a 5-10 minute look around at managers that, didn't have a job, but or one actually does, but had been linked to MLS teams previously. Marcelo Gallardo, I think, is the biggest name that's kind of linked, or maybe not linked right now, but will probably eventually be linked to them. He coached Pity Martinez when he was at River Plate, and he kind of falls into that Tata Martino role and being able to get this attractive soccer out of his team. And I think it just brings that like South American finesse back to Atlanta. However, they could also go with Leonardo Jardim, who was linked with the Benfica job before Jorge Jesus took over. And now he's linked with the Flamengo job, which Jorge Jesus left to go coach Benfica.
So interconnected.
So, I mean, I think joining a team that was doing well in Flamenco might attract him a little bit more, but I think Jardim's style of play resembles that of Tata's in the fact that he likes to have, his fullbacks get wide, his wing players kind of come inside, and they play that attractive style of soccer. We saw it with Monaco when they won Liga with him in 2017. And the last one was Marco Silva, who just left Everton, who's probably the biggest oddball of the group, just because he doesn't really have a proven track record. But I think he plays a system that Atlanta's current group would be okay in. And if he kind of gets this weird regular season to find out what he has in the squad, he can make it better with the next transfer window, with the next offseason, I think.
Yeah.
Now, Justin, I do have an issue with your list here because I think you're missing two very attractive names that are very obvious that haven't been mentioned here. And I know everyone listening knows where I'm going with this. I think, Justin, I'm looking at you here on our Skype feed. I think you even know where I'm going with this. I'm a little disappointed that I haven't heard you throw out this name, or I don't think that I'm looking at right now. Sam Allardyce. I don't see his name. Don't know how this would work. No David Moyes at West Ham.
What about Jurgen Klinsmann?
No.
I don't think he'll. Yeah.
I don't think he'll never manage an MLS.
I'm kidding.
With the way he dumped all over Don Garber in MLS when he was the national team manager, he will never manage in MLS.
I mean, it's to give you credit though. Sam Allardyce usually comes in to stabilize the team, so maybe he comes in, kind of stabilizes them for the regular season.
Got to keep them up, He's going to come in, going to keep them up just above the drop, So exactly. Yeah, I think that
keep them in the playoff. I guess the line
in the playoffs.
Keep them in the playoffs above the line. No, and then the Athletic also said, threw in Dominic Torrent and Miguel Herrera. I liked Miguel Herrera. That would be a fun signing. But I think Justin, you said something spot on there. It's about the style. Right, Atlanta United need to find a manager in which the players want to play, because they clearly revolted against Frank de Boer's system despite the success they had. They weren't happy with it. They were going to run with it last year because it led them silverware. It led them to the conference finals. Thinking about it, perfect moment to get rid of Frank de Boer. You have 3 straight losses, so it's like, all right, cut the cord. It's already a freaky season. You could sit there and say, look, it was a lost season to begin with, so why not put in some interim manager and then spend the next 3-4 months looking for the ideal candidate. And then you kind of hit the reset button once the season's over, and you go into 2021 with hopefully a healthy Joseph Martinez and a full assembled squad whose morale is high with this new manager.
Yeah, it feels like them firing De Boer now would lead you to think that they want to bring somebody in pretty quickly. I think them not bringing somebody in now ahead of the regular season would be an opportunity missed. Because like I've been saying, it just gets them used to the squad, and it gets them to meet the squad and who they have in a season, like you're saying, is already kind of wacky. So at this point, it's like you really got nothing to lose if you bring them in and just let them do what they need to for this regular season. But yeah, they could also just bring in an interim coach and take that time to look for the next replacement, because you obviously don't want to rush the next guy in either.
Dave Sarakin. I got jokes tonight, guys. I said last week that I thought there was no way in hell they were going to fire De Boer in Orlando or after the season. I didn't think it made sense with the pandemic. I don't know how you go out. I mean, with the pandemic and with the way that things are in the U.S. right now, I don't know how you go out and find his permanent replacement. To me, it sounds like it would make more sense. And I know I'm probably gonna eat crow for this. I'm sure the watch will hit the mics next weekend, and I'll be like, oh, Atlanta United's got a new permanent manager, and it's this guy who managed in Europe or whatever. To me, with the difficulties that the pandemic brings currently, I just don't see how it's not some assistant coach for the rest of the season, and then they hire somebody in the fall or winter to take over permanently for De Boer. Now, guys, last topic up for discussion. The round of 16 in the MLS is back tournament kicks off tomorrow night with Orlando playing Montreal at 8 p.m. Eastern, and then the Revs taking on the Union at 10:30 Eastern. And question of the day for you two, as well as our listeners, at Pod, at Justin Sosa 99, at Stephen Jodaran, at Jake Watroba. What should these clubs' mentalities be heading into these knockout rounds? They don't matter for the regular season. They're essentially glorified preseason games at this point, with the one exception being you're going to qualify for the CONCACAF Champions League. But we've seen some clubs in the past in this league not really take that tournament plus $1 million. But we've seen clubs in the past in this league not really take the Champions League all that seriously, a la Colorado Rapids a few years ago. So, I mean, Justin, I'll give you the floor here. What should some of these clubs' mentalities be? Is it let's go and win these games, or are these just glorified scrimmages for teams like FC Cincinnati or San Jose or RSL?
I think the smaller teams like FC Cincinnati and like Montreal need to use the rest of these games, or as many as they can get if they get beyond the round of 16, as momentum going into the regular season. Because, I mean, these are teams that we weren't necessarily expecting to make it this far in the tournament to begin with. Vancouver too. So at this point, I think them more than anybody need to kind of just keep this good momentum going and build on what they already had in the group stage, so that when it does come to the regular season and when the games do matter, they've already got that confidence and that kind of mojo to go in and do the job to make the playoffs afterwards.
Justin, do you think that, like, say Thierry Henry, does he look at it and going like, okay, this is survive and advance, this is tournament football, we got to grind the result out? Or is he going there and going like, screw the result, this is an extra 90 minutes to work on my system? And if Montreal go down 1-0 in the 60th minute, or if they're up 1-0 in the 60th minute, is Thierry Henry going to tweak his system in which it's going to be, no, I want you to stay firm, and they're going to ignore the scoreline, but really work on his system, so that way, like as you mentioned, when the regular season comes around, when there's points at stake, playoff positions, that they're going to feel confident that in their ability to succeed?
I think with Henry, we saw it in the CONCACAF Champions League that he sets up Montreal to be good in these knockout kind of competitions, or at least these stages of tournaments. I don't think he even has a squad set to kind of implement this style of play that he may want. I don't really think he has a set style of play yet. He had very limited time with Monaco as a head coach to really get a grasp for what he wanted. I just think that for now, he wants Montreal to be defensively sound. And what we've seen from them in the group stage and from the 2 games in the regular season back in March is going to continue throughout, this tournament, or at least as far as they go in the knockout stages.
Okay, but that's fair. Great. But what about other managers? What's Bruce Arena thinking? Oscar Pereira, Adrian Heath, Bob Bradley, forgetting the name of Seattle's coach. Every coach, basically. Spencer. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, I think for every team, it's difficult to not look at these games and kind of say, well, we've done what we needed to for the regular season. Let's just kind of go with the flow at this point. And if we make it to the final, then we make it to the final. I still think, though, that these coaches and these players are here and they didn't travel to Orlando and play through this heat and through this, horrible weather and these kind of wacky conditions to at least not give it a go to win this title and to win the rewards that come with it. So I think we can expect coaches to throw out their strongest teams. Maybe they feel a little bit more freedom to experiment with a player or two here and there. But I think for the most part, we'll see full strength 11s from everybody.
Jake, I'm curious to know what these managers are thinking. Are they, this could be a great team confidence booster for the regular season, right? Justin's talking about this momentum. How good would it be for a Minnesota United to go out there and win some silverware, whatever the meaning of that silverware may be, whatever, and then ride that into this new 18-game regular season format that will follow MLS's back tournament?
And more on that 18-game regular season schedule next week as we talk about that later this weekend there, Steven. But I do think, if you're a club that comes in here in these knockout rounds, any one of these clubs really, you could definitely argue that if you go on and win this is definitely a huge confidence booster. This is definitely a wind in your sail as we approach the regular season. Like, look, any of these managers, no one's going to say, well, I hope we lose in the first round. That, I would love to just lose. We'll have, what looks to be 3 to 4 weeks off. We can then do training again. And there's nothing like playing a game. There's nothing like getting that match fitness going. And I just think that a lot of these teams, FC Cincinnati included, a lot of them want an extended stay in Orlando, and they want to win as many games as they possible and survive in advance. And hopefully they're hoisting the MLS's back cup, I guess, if you will. So I think you'd be pretty hard pressed to find a manager in Orlando that's not taking this seriously.
Yeah, I just wonder though, what are these managers going, will they transform their system, something in which they want to implement for the sake of the result to survive in advance? Will an Oscar Pereira suddenly become parking the bus for the final 35 minutes against Montreal Saturday night to survive and advance to the quarterfinals? I don't know. And speaking of Orlando, Montreal, there are some sexy matchups. Sounders, LAFC, Crew, Minnesota, Toronto versus NYCFC. Out of the 8 games there, what do you think is the most enticing?
I'm not going to pick the obvious one because there's a very obvious one. Okay. Well, and I think Justin was going to say, well, no, the last podcast, Justin had said a couple of things that I thought weren't so obvious. So maybe he's a guy that likes to take the path less traveled here. For me, the matchup that I think is the sexiest, if you will, I think Philly, New England.
Really?
Would be yeah. I've enjoyed, dating back to last season, I enjoyed watching Philadelphia play. I think they're a fun team to play with. My guy Shibuko. We all know on this podcast I like that guy.
Yes, you do.
And look, Bruce Arena, we've talked about it time and time again. And Steven, I'm gonna talk about the Revs this episode, Steven. This isn't your time to talk about the Revs. This is my time. Okay.
I've converted this man.
I'm stealing your touchdown call. I mean, with Gustavo Bo, with Bruce Arena. Look, I mean, this team, I don't know what it is, but Bruce Arena, I feel like can sprinkle a little pixie dust on this team, and he could get them to the final. And I don't know, man. I just think Philly, Revs, I think that those are two teams that match up well. I think you could flip a coin in that game, and I think it could be super interesting. Now, like I said, there's an obvious game. There's an obvious matchup on Monday night, late Monday night, that I think everybody will be circling on their calendar for, or their schedule. But for me, I mean, if we're going to ignore that game, I'm taking Phillies Revs.
Interesting that you say it's a coin toss. Jay, according to 538, Philadelphia is 57% likely to win. New England only 43. There are several other 50-50 games. Toronto, there are a few 50-50 games, very close games. In fact, Toronto 50-50 with NYCFC, San Jose, Real Salt Lake 50-50 there. Your Minnesota United are actually underdogs against Columbus Crew. But Justin, let me ask you, what's the sexy matchup here? Is it the obvious Seattle Sounders versus LAFC?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's kind of looking at that as the match to watch, especially because it's a repeat of the Western Conference Finals from last year. But I agree with Jake in that Philly and New England is an intriguing matchup because you have players like Pania, Bo, and Hill who can kind of create some magic for the Revs, and you have Philly who just like to attack. So something to me says that this game could be like a 5-5 to penalties type of thing. Just
yes, give it to us.
If everybody's just, if the Revs are clicking and Philly's pressing and both teams are kind of just like throwing defense out the window, because I mean, neither team really has a great defense, but I wouldn't say they have a bad defense. It's just the creativity and offensive nature that both teams can kind of manifest, I think, is going to make this a high scoring game. But as far as the game to watch, I think San Jose and RSL might be interesting. I think San Jose are going to force RSL out of this kind of defensive shell that we've seen them play in, and I think that'll be interesting to see if RSL can kind of create something in the final third and be more progressive and attacking than we have seen already.
You know what's really interesting? LAFC is 63% favored versus Seattle. Only 37% chance. It seems like, Jake, if I were a betting man, Seattle would be a gross underdog. The other matchup I'm actually really interested in is Orlando City, Montreal, because these are two clubs that no one had expectations for. Here they are. One of them is going to have a quarterfinal appearance, a chance to be in the semifinals. I'm curious to know how these two squads look at each other going like, I think both of them believe that they can go in and win. And I think that's fascinating. Here you have two, smaller dogs in the fight. Do they really look at it thinking they could win this tournament? Probably not. But they could make some noise. I think there is something to it. Now, this is something that Justin, you had written down in our pre-show notes here. Is what is the single greatest underdog? Like, if we were to say this team won, would it be shocking? Is it so obvious that FC Cincinnati, if they beat Portland, it would be that big of a shock for everybody?
Well, I mean, if they beat Portland, yes, even though they have the wins over Atlanta and the Red Bulls, I think, I have Portland winning the whole thing. I said this last show, I really backed the Timbers to kind of do something special at this tournament, but I think the Timbers are a much better team all around in comparison to the Red Bulls in Atlanta. And I think Cincinnati are going to find it a lot harder to sit in that shell when they have players like Blanco and like Valeri who can work in those compressed spaces and kind of open up defenses even when they want to be super compact. I would say Montreal has the biggest, underdog label on them if they were to make some runs to the final or win the tournament, only because they're playing Orlando, who's coming into this game hot. And if they manage to beat Orlando, they have to play either Seattle or LAFC. So, and that might be their biggest challenge if they are to make the final, because after that they're playing one of the other teams in the other bracket, on the other side of the bracket, who will most likely be the Crew, who outside of LAFC have probably been the best team at the tournament, and then they have to win the final just in general. So, they've got a tough road if they're going to be the biggest underdog and then kind of win this whole thing if they do.
I really hope some of these teams just have fun with it. Some managers just like, look, boys, we've done the job. We've gotten the results for the regular season. Let's go out there and have some fun. Let's see if we can make some noise. Like, what stops Montreal for having the belief saying, like, look, no one believes that we should really be here. Same with Orlando. Same with FC Cincinnati. No one pegged them to be at this stage. A lot of them thought they would crash out, especially FC Cincinnati, right, Jake? No one thought they would beat the Red Bulls and Atlanta United. But here they are, a chance, I get one of the favorites, right?
Pull of Greece. Like, remember when Jurgen Klinsmann like to throw around the Greeks winning the Euros? What was it, 2004? Is that the year they won it?
In Portugal.
Yeah. Here, Justin will know. Yeah. Pull Portugal.
Yep.
I mean, it's a one-off tournament. Weird things happen. Who knows? I mean, I think you guys had mentioned, look, if Montreal or Orlando, whoever wins that game, I mean, yeah, they face a buzzsaw in either Seattle or LFC. And if for whatever reason they were to beat either one of those two teams, they got to go up against probably the Crew. For me, I think another team you guys forgot to mention, I mean, the Whitecaps. I mean, do any of us anticipate the Whitecaps doing anything? Are they still using an MLS pool goalkeeper?
I was just going to say, Steven, for, if you're looking for a team where the coach is kind of like, let's just go out there and see what we can do, the Whitecaps are definitely it. Mm-hmm. I just think there's so many players missing through injury or whatever it may be that, they're kind of just at a happy to be here type of moment. And
that's a dangerous team to play.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think when they go out against KC, the strategy might be go out, see what you can do, try and frustrate them, because I'm pretty sure they'll give possession to SKC for the entire match if they could. And then they'll just try and hit them on the counterattack through Jordi Reyna like they did with the Fire.
Yeah. Listeners, we want to know what's your excitement level for MLS is back? I think I'm pretty excited now that we've gotten out of the group stage. It was fun. I think as the tournament went on, I think the games started to mean stuff. You had the points, you had the third place teams. Now it's knockout stage. Let's see what these teams have. I'm excited for it. And let's end on this note, boys. MLS is back. Obviously, we have the NBA coming around the corner. MLB is here. Opening weekend is now. The NBA is next week. You got NFL on the horizon. Is this it for MLS, or are they going to now be on the back page of sports, or do they have an opportunity here to have some fun now that it's a knockout stage, and the fact that there's silverware to be played within the next 2 weeks?
Do you want to end on a positive note or a negative note?
Well, you're Mr. Negative, so let's go to Justin.
So Justin, why don't you take this one then, and I'll maybe I'll end things.
I think it's definitely unfortunate that the knockout rounds kind of align with MLB and NBA coming back. You got to look at how MLS marketed the tournament in general, and I don't think they did a great job with it. Because had they done so, we would have had an audience for the group stage. Regardless of whether the soccer was super, super great or 5-3, 6-2 games every single night. Because we would have at least had some attention stay with us to see who won this tournament. So I think we are going to miss out on a large audience kind of seeing who does win this tournament. But I also think that for the small number of people that we may have attracted to watch MLS a little bit more, we'll at least have that to kind of put in our back pocket and say, you know what, we were the first men's professional league to come back. and finish out an entire, kind of tournament style season, which is something I think everybody doubted would happen, especially when Dallas and Nashville went home. So I think the positive to take from this whole thing is they put it together, they had a plan, they followed it, and pretty soon they'll have finished the entire plan and they can just say, you know what, we did it first, we set the blueprint along with the NWSL, and that's all they can kind of, tip their hats to.
All right, guys, I'm going to rain on everyone's parade here. I hope you're all ready for this. I think, Stevie, that you posed the question of, will MLS become Backpage News once the NBA comes back next year?
Let me guess. It's already Backpage News.
It's been Backpage News. This whole tournament was Backpage News. I mean, come on, man. You have all these. You turn on ESPN, and they could be coming out of one of the games on MLS, and we're talking about a Dak Prescott potential contract extension, or we're talking about what LeBron James ate in the bubble today, or we're talking about Mookie Betts signing a contract extension. Is college football going to be played this year? I mean, the list goes on and on. I don't want to be this guy and say MLS sucks or come off like that, but I just don't believe that it was ever front page news to begin with. I mean, look at the TV ratings. I mean, we talked about them last weekend. 296,000 viewers was the average on the ESPN networks. I mean, they were literally only competing against NWSL. So, I mean, those, and there was nothing else on. So I think those numbers kind of tell the whole story. I just feel like they've been back page news the entire time. But listeners, before we go, question of the day again, what should coaches' mentalities be heading into the knockout rounds? Should they take this seriously, or should it just be, this is like a practice run for us,
Jake,
as we get ready for the restart of the regular season?
Jake,
you can follow
if Minnesota United win this trophy, are you going to celebrate as this is being?
Oh, we're popping the bottles, baby.
As a Minnesota sports fan, when's the last time you saw somebody lift some silverware?
I saw the Lynx lift a couple WNBA titles. I think the last one was 5 years ago, somewhere in that time frame. So that was the last time. I was alive for a Twins World Series championship, albeit I was 2 years old. But yeah, we celebrate any kind of achievement. We celebrate up here. Okay, this is Loserville, USA. So, but anyways, that's the show. Follow us on Twitter at UncSamSoccerPod. Follow Justin at JustinSosa99. Follow Steven Jodran at Steven Jodran. And you can follow myself at Jake Watroba.
Mr. Negative.
Mr. Negative.